Podcast number one. We're calling this the elephant in the room. And not that you guys are the elephant in the room. So we got Chief Jimmy Johnson. We got Lieutenant Wade Pennington. Wade's been helping me with some of my Bible studies. Jimmy and I have been talking about God and everything for a long time. So what we're wanting to look at is as we're going through, and I'll put it up. We got Revealing Revelation, Amir Tsarfati. He co-writes with a guy by the name of Dr. Rick Yon. I've been reading their stuff for a long time. One of the things I love about Amir is he's a Jew. He's a Messianic Jew, which simply means he believes that Jesus is the Messiah for everybody, but Israel's Messiah specifically. So it's kind of cool when he does a lot of his, when he does some of his podcasts, he's sitting at the back of his house, and the back of his house literally overlooks the Valley of Megiddo. So, and he talks about it. This is where where the armies will eventually come. And when he looks at the Bible, he does it from, and we're going to talk about that today, from a premillennial, pre-trib rapture perspective. And he takes everything from a literal lens, and he's written books over Daniel, I'm preaching one now over Ezekiel, and of course this one's Revealing Revelation, which we're doing for the officers here. So I'll let you start, Jimmy. You can introduce just yourself real quick and kind of a little bit of your background as far as the Bible.
Oh, my name is Jimmy Johnson from Amarillo. I was raised in a Christian home, Baptist. We were Southern Baptist, and through the years we were ebbed and flowed on how involved we were with the church. But I've been a Christian my whole life. Accepted Christ as my Savior about the age of 15, like my upbringing, my Christian walk has kind of ebbed and flowed over my life, depending on where I was at in my lifetime. So that's kind of where I'm at now.
So what are you studying at your church? Anything?
Right now we have a series on called "It's More Than Just a Job," and it talks about your literal job and how that applies to your faith, and talking about things like the concept of retirement. Now that's really not a Christian concept. Retirement, you're called to work your whole life, and going back to the Garden of Eden and how that was actually work was not a burden put on somebody. Work was part of the good thing that you could do. It was the fall of man that turned it into a bad thing, and so we're right in the middle of that series, and then in my own time, I'm in Paul's letters to Corinth right now. I've gone back several months ago and started working through the New Testament. I went through the Gospels, and I'm up to Paul's letters to Corinth right now. Just not looking for anything specific, just kind of looking for revelation, the new revelation or anything.
Well, that's going to be good, man, because we're going to talk about 1 Corinthians. And the really good news, you guys heard it on the very first podcast, Chief's never retiring ever. I mean, it's ever. He's going to work forever.
I'm going to work forever.
What about you, Wade? What's kind of your background?
So Wade Pennington, I accepted Christ into my life when I was 14. My grandparents were very influential in my Christian walk. I was baptized at 16 and at 9th and Bliss in Dumas, Texas. My mother has been in our church, kind of
like land of the demons.
Yeah, It's ding dong daddies, what they say. But yeah, my mom raised me a single parent, and so I got a lot of influence from her. She was, ebbed and flowed with the church as well. I was involved in the youth in high school, and recently have just within the last 5 years really gotten more in depth with studying the Bible and being more involved at church and just trying to learn more and be better. So it's been a long journey, but I've never felt closer to God than I have, within this recent
definitely
past.
seen that because, just for you guys to know, it was Wade came to me and said, hey, can we do some stuff? So we went through Ephesians chapter 6. We talked about the whole armor of God. Then we did a First Advent series. Talked about the first coming of Christ. Of course, now talking about the second. We're talking about the second Advent. I don't think anybody has as big an issue with the first Advent, but there's a lot of differences in the second Advent. So what are you studying right now, and what's church doing?
So we had actually just been going over some stuff about selecting some deacons at the church, and I actually got selected to be a deacon. So we'd been kind of studying some things in Timothy about becoming a deacon and some of those things like that. So last Sunday we did a big message, our preacher did, over the deacons and what the responsibilities are of those guys in the church. And so that was kind of a neat deal. In our Sunday school class, we've kind of hit Old Testament stuff, and we've actually recently done some Daniel. And so it's really cool to be able to dig into that.
That's fixed to be my question. I was going to put that to both of you guys. So I'm curious. So you guys have been Christians for a long time. How many times have you had somebody preach through, say, the book of Revelation?
I can't remember it, honestly.
Yeah, I don't. It's one of those that's. I don't think in any of the churches that I've been in or been invited to that there's a real emphasis ever put on just Revelation. I remember many years ago at First Baptist Church when Dr. Moore was there, Winford Moore, great pastor. I remember him one time talking about in a sermon, and I was a young person, so I don't remember all of it, what he was talking about, but he was talking about how a lot of people focus on Revelation. They want to know about Revelation. They want to get into it. And a lot of it has to do with because of the subject matter of the end times and the prophecy and all the mystery around it and everything. But he was very fond of saying, if you want to learn about Revelation, you need to learn about the rest of the Bible. The rest of the Bible that leads you to Revelation. That's what you need to focus on.
I agree. Even I tell people, say, look, if you really want to have a true understanding of Revelation, you really have to have an understanding of the Old Testament.
Yeah.
And even some of these old prophets, whether it's Daniel, Ezekiel, Isaiah, but they do play into this. And in fact, I tell people, Daniel is looking at this time period, this great tribulation. It's got a lot of names. The day of Jacob's trouble, the period of indignation, the great and awesome day of the Lord, great tribulation, which you hear a lot. But those names, when Daniel's looking at it, he's looking at it from backwards going forward, like it's an event coming. But when John gets the revelation, when Jesus gives it, it's almost like he's getting the revelation the other direction, like he's here and he's looking back at it. Almost like he's already in the new heaven, the new earth, it's already there. And so the two perspectives together are very interesting. So that's kind of what we're going to look at today. So the elephant in the room is mainly a biblical view of viewing Scripture, to me, even for any of the prophets. So I will tell you, like Amir, I don't typically get in the weeds, which is why I was curious, the groups that we have in these podcasts, somebody's going to have people are going to have different views from me. Even in our first study, I already got one that views a little different. Mm-hmm. I mean, he says he's a preterist, which is, I haven't run into too many of those, but that is a big group. So, and I never get in the weeds with those guys. To me, even though it's a theological, I'm not dogmatic about it. There's enough in it. And I told people when we go through Revelation, there's some things in here that even I'm a little fuzzy on. And I said, when I get to things where I'm fuzzy, I'm just going to let you know. I don't know. Here's what these guys believe. Here's what these guys believe. And ultimately, I want these guys to read through it and make up their own mind. You know what I'm saying? So we're going to talk about that. Jimmy brought it up. We didn't have audio a while ago, but eisegetical versus exegetical. And exegetical simply means that, hey, we're looking at the Bible, we're reading through it, and then I base my doctrinal or my worldviews and everything on what I'm reading, as opposed to, and how'd you say it, eisegetical?
About kind of forming your opinion and then going looking for the things that validate that opinion, or twisting them around as best you can to make it fit what you think is it.
Yeah.
And that's the real, I think that especially when it comes to Revelation, there's other subjects like this too, but I think that's caused a lot of division in the church when we take our eyes off of the important thing, the path to salvation being only through Christ, and starting to look at some of these other things that aren't not necessarily have anything to do with your salvation or not, and we get into these huge arguments, cause a lot of division, and it stems from people thinking they know, okay, this is what that says, and I've been through that in different phases of my life, in various, not just Revelation, but different things where I was convinced I understood the way it was, and then later to find out, no, I think I was wrong about that, and now I try to look at everything as if I don't know anything, and I'm just trying to get some kind of guidance from the Holy Spirit on which direction to go with that. And it's funny because every time I hear people arguing about it and just convinced that they have the Scripture that verifies their word, I hear the serpent in the garden saying, "Did Jesus really say, or did God really say?" You know, I mean, that's
you
kind of
ain't
what
wrong.
I picture in my mind.
Yeah, it's funny because when you say that came out of the first part of the study, because that was my kind of my introduction to Revelation. I'm like, look, this is not, this whole thing is not a plan that just started. It literally started in the garden.
Yeah.
And I said, and God did. He literally talked to the serpent and says, look, there's fixing to be, I'm going to create enmity between your seed and the seed of a woman. And it's already looking way down, 4,000 years down the road to Jesus. And we were kind of talked about that back and forth. I said, look, if you're Satan, what do you do? Well, you try to kill that seed. If you know there's a seed coming, well, he did, Cain and Abel, that didn't work. Well, then he just disrupts the seed. That's when we get the giants and the Nephilim. And he keeps coming up with these ideas. And I really do believe that when Jesus went to that cross, Satan thought, I won. I got it. And then when he's resurrected, he's like, this is the biggest mistake I've ever made.
Yeah.
So that's the thing that's kind of not really a cat and mouse, because God sees everything. Satan only can see what's in front of his face. Yeah. So we're going to get a little back. So back to this. I mean, a theological position or and we're going to talk about eschatology. Eschatology is just a really fancy word in theology for the study of future things. Typically, they have to do with the end times. Not only, I mean, obviously there's some of those prophetic things. In fact, I told people in that last study, the conservative efforts are 1,800 prophecies roughly in the Bible. There's other estimates that put that closer to 25, but I like the number 1,800. Works pretty good. Of those 1,800, 1,300 have already been fulfilled. Like, we could see them. And they're so accurate. Some of them are so accurate that if you were to put a number on it, literally the statisticians look at it and it's like 1.0 times 10 to the 20 to the power. It's like it could not happen the way that it happened. In fact, since you're going through Daniel chapter 11 is a great example. Those people believe there's no way Daniel wrote it. It's too accurate that it had to be something written during the time, maybe of the Maccabean revolt, maybe it got stolen from Alexander the Great, and it just got put back as if Daniel wrote it. But that's how accurate it is. Mm-hmm. And I tell them, I say, look, God has given us 66 books that make up the Bible. I always tell them it's like basic instruction before leaving Earth. But he's given us a glimpse of what is coming. I mean, as a good father, he's saying, look, I'm going to give you an idea. Here's what's coming. And if you read Revelation from, like you say, from an eisegetical point of view, if you got this thing, hey, here's what this really means, man, it's a scary book. But if you read about it from Jesus's perspective, I'm coming to do these things because I am fixing to bring back righteousness. I'm getting us back to this garden idea. Mm-hmm. I'm going to get us back before Satan, before the fall of man, before the curse, before you had pain and cancer and death and all these. I'm getting us back to that. But we've got the 7-year period that we're going to have to go through to get to. So it is a little rough. I'm not going to lie. But anyway, I'm not dogmatic on it. Back to what you were saying about salvation. Yeah, some of those things. In fact, we're going to talk about John chapter 14, and he ends this idea. Of course, I preach it in every funeral. I mean, it's in my Father's house. But it ends with "I'm the way, the truth, and the life." That's what he says to Thomas. So we're going to talk about there's no other way to get there. He's the door. He's the path. We don't believe there's any other one. So. Some of what we're doing here today is apologetics, and apologetics is a really simple word for it. It's just we're defending our faith. And even Paul, you're saying you're going through Timothy, but even in Timothy, Paul's really definitive about it. Look, we need to be ready. All of us need to be ready in and out of season to be able to defend our faith. And of course, we're not young pups no more. So we've been reading through the Bible. We've got a lot of church experience, and hopefully that'll play in here. So I'm going to start it, and these guys we're gonna go through several verses, and what Amir's bringing into the workbook is that there are two events that are mentioned. Those get very confused. A lot of people try to put them into a event, especially a lot of the non-rapture believers or the all-millennialists. They believe all these things are a event, but when they come out, they're very different events, whether we're talking about Zechariah or what we see in Malachi, even what Jesus says during the Olivet Discourse on the Mount of Olives, chapter 24 and 25 of Matthew. And they're very different from what we see in Paul's writings to the church of Thessalonica and where you're at, the church of Corinth. They're just very different events. So we're going to go through that. We're going to read it. Hopefully these guys get it. But I'm going to start with John chapter 14. I told you that's kind of my funeral. That's my funeral verse. I'm going to throw a little caveat in there because it's not in my notes. But there's another great verse in Isaiah, and if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. But I think it's Isaiah 26:20. Maybe I'll pop over to that here in just a minute. We'll run through that. But here's verses 1 through 3. In John 14, he says, "Let not your heart be troubled. You believe in God, believe also in me. In my Father's house are many mansions. If it were not so, I would have told you. I go to prepare a place for you. And if I go and prepare a place for you, I will come again and receive you to myself, that where I am, there you may be also." So Jesus is, what's interesting, and I tell people, you guys ever been to a wedding in another country, like especially Middle East or anything? You ever seen anything like that? Anything like that? It's interesting. So when I've never been to Israel, but when I was in India, there was a wedding that started, and of course they got these drums, and they're banging on the drum, boom, 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 and they're walking through the city. So nobody knows this wedding's going on, and the whole point is they're banging on the drum, and they know, hey man, there's a party going on. So people just start following in line, and they all end up at wherever this wedding's going to be. And it's a very interesting thing. Of course, never seen it in this country. But my assumption is they have to have enough food and stuff to feed this group that they've somehow gathered amongst the journey. So maybe they plan their routes to, hey man, there ain't that many people this way, so we're gonna go this way. So in the Bible, what's interesting is that's literally the way a Jewish wedding would kind of play out, in that a bridegroom takes interest in a bride, even if it's an arranged marriage, which that's pretty prevalent in India. But the way it would work is they had a dowry. You'd have to pay the dowry. So that was not really truly a caste system, but almost like the Indians in some respect. But once that was taken care of, and we're going to get married, that bridegroom would go back to his father's house, just like it's talking about here. In my father's house, there, other translation says many rooms. But the bridegroom's job was to go back to the father's house and start building on rooms. He had to make room for his new bride. He had to make room for the new kids that he was going to have, because that's the way it worked back in those days. You would add to your father's house. And unlike us, where your dad's pretty quick to kick you out the doors and you go get your own house.
Time to go.
But that's the way it was. What's interesting about the idea of, and why so much of the New Testament's tied to it, is because it was the father of the bridegroom that would finally look at him and be like, that's good enough. Go get your bride. But the other side of it was the bride never knew when the bridegroom was coming, because the bridegroom didn't know when he was coming. It wasn't until the bridegroom's father said, yeah, that's good. I'm okay with this. I'm ready for you to bring your bride. That's when the wedding ceremony would happen. And it would happen. So when you look at the New Testament, a lot of things that Jesus is talking about, even when he says, the day of the Lord or his return specifically, he says, no one knows. No one knows the day or hour. And that's what his disciples were trying to get. When are you coming back? And he's like, nobody knows. I mean, nobody knows. He says, not even the Son. He was saying, I don't even know. Only the Father. And it's back to that wedding idea. The church is considered the bride. So this whole part that he's talking about here is he's playing off of this bridegroom idea. He's at the Father's house. He's building these rooms. That's what he's saying. I'm going to prepare a place for you, for the bride, which is the church, and I'm going to come again. But when you go further into Matthew 24, the reason he doesn't know the hour or the day, and he says no man knows it, is because he's got to wait for the Father to say, go fetch your bride. That's when he's coming to get us. And he says that whatever place he's preparing there in his Father's house, he's going to come get us, and he's going to take us back there. So, here's the thing about that particular verse, is that when he refers to his death and his leaving, these disciples are bummed out. Thomas is like, well, where are you going? And Jesus is like, you know where I'm going. You know the way. And Thomas is like, no, I don't. None of us know where you're going. And Jesus' response to him was, that's the famous verse that we were talking about, I'm the way, the truth, the life. No man comes to the Father except through me. And he was telling him, hey, look, I'm not giving you a map. You're not going to try to, you don't need a map to get to where I'm going. I am the map. I am the way. You don't have to worry about how to get to the destination, because he's already told them, I'm coming to get you. I mean, it's one thing to go somewhere else, but if Jimmy shows up and says, hey, man, I'm driving, I already know how to get there. I don't have to know how to get there. I just need him to come fetch me and take me. So the good news is, when he's telling that, he's saying, I'm leaving. I'm going to go away for a while. The thing is, we didn't realize it was going to be this long. That's a great verse of 2 Peter when he says, don't count slow as people count slowness. He says, we're not slow. He says, my Father is just not willing that any should perish, but all come to everlasting life. So he holds back this time that we're fixing to talk about, because he loves the world, and he's trying to give them a chance. So I'm going to go through some deals. I'm going to see if you guys have heard them. In fact, if it's cool. It's 4 major ideas. I'm actually going to let you read the first one on preterists. If you'll read, tell us what a preterist is.
So preterists, either revelation has already taken place, and this group are called preterists. They believe it's already happened.
Yeah. So we got partial preterist, meaning they don't necessarily believe everything. In fact, a partial preterist will believe that everything in the book the book of the Bible, all done, every bit of it, with maybe the exception of the great white throne judgment, which is at the end, or the new heaven and earth. That's not here. So, but everything else they believe everything in Revelation is done. Now, full preterists, they believe from Genesis chapter 1 to Revelation chapter 22, all of it's done. So that one is in my opinion, that one's a very dangerous view of the Bible. I can kind of work around with partial preterists a little bit that have that view, but a full preterist, there's some real issues with, number one, with Jesus coming back. Tons of problems with 1st and 2nd Thessalonians. Tons of problems with the Old Testament prophets. You're going to have some issues with Ezekiel, Isaiah, Daniel, and even what Jesus said. We just read what Jesus said in John chapter 14, but even in the Olivet discourse, tons of things about Jesus coming back, which I'm going to have. I think Jimmy's reading that one. I'm not sure. So, Jimmy, what about amillennialism? Can you read through that one?
So amillennialism believes that the book of Revelation is not literal, meaning there is no literal 1,000-year earthly reign of Christ, but that we are living in a spiritual reign of Christ in the hearts of believers rather than a physical reign of Christ on earth. Some in this group still believe that Jesus will return for the great white throne judgment and bring the new heaven and new earth.
Okay, so that's all millennialist, and I'll be honest, the vast majority of major, or what I call mainstream denominations, the ones that date back probably at least since the Reformation or even older, Catholics, great example. They're primarily all millennialists, and not that all of them are. There's a Catholic priest, I can't remember his name right now, but he's out of Italy, and he's interesting because I don't know how the bucking system works over there. If you can buck the Pope or buck the, because they have major catechisms and creeds that they follow, but he's not, man. He's definitely a premillennialist. He believes in the rapture, which is kind of a departure from them. So obviously there's freedom even within, and I'd say it's probably true of any. I mean, you grew up Baptist. Baptists are 50-50 on that. General Baptists are, some of them are all millennialists. The other half are kind of premillennial. So you got differences even in Baptists. And I don't know, did you say, was there a main denomination that you had growing up?
Yeah, so Church of Christ.
Oh, Church of Christ, 100% all millennialists. And I don't even know if they've gotten back from that. But having said that, I've got Church of Christ preachers that I have worked with for years, and I don't know if they have to be secret premillennialists, but they are premillennial. They have a premillennial view. They have a rapture view. So yeah, even within those faiths, no, they're not. It's not solid. So that's an interesting thing. So regardless of where you come at, that's kind of where I'm asking people. Step out of whatever your main core thought. Just read this like as if it's literal, and see if it fits. See if it fits Ezekiel, see if it fits all of these other scriptures. So the one that I am and the one that I'm pushing is premillennial. So premillennial, I believe, just like in the prayer. I mean, we know the Lord's Prayer, but in the Lord's Prayer, he says, your kingdom come, your will be done, where?
On earth as it is in heaven.
On earth as it is in heaven. So I believe that Jesus has a kingdom. It's just not here. Mm-hmm. And he's telling us to pray in our prayers that this kingdom and God's will come to earth just like it is in heaven. So I believe, when you see Stephen getting stoned in the book of Acts, he looks up and he says, I see the Son of Man standing behind, but on the right side of the power. The interesting deal, because it goes back to the book of Daniel, where the same idea happens. And of course, when we get into Revelation, we see, hey, God's got a scroll in his hand that's got seals on it, but nobody was found worthy to open those seals. And John goes to bawling. And finally one said, hey, man, don't cry, man. There's someone worthy. And he said he looked at it, and it looked like a lamb who had been slain. And we know that Jesus was the one that was worthy to take but he takes the scroll from the Father, so he's in heaven. So that's the premillennial view, and we believe that God will send his Son for a literal 1,000-year reign on earth. That's my view. And of course, I have a preacher of rapture. We're going to talk about that here in a minute. Postmillennialism believes that Christ will return, that his return will occur after the millennial. So if you've ever heard of the kingdom now, There's a lot of believers that believe that. Like it's the church's job to convince everybody else to get on Team Jesus. And if they'll get on Team Jesus, well, Jesus will come back, but not until everybody's on Team Jesus. And we've been going now for 2,000 years since Christ's ascension almost. And I don't see that one playing out. I mean, if there is a great revival coming that'll get almost 9 billion people on Team Jesus, that'd be great. But it doesn't fit the book of Revelation. So I'm definitely not, I'm not in the post-millennial. That group believes that Christianity, the gospel, will gradually win over the world and lead to a time of peace. Where I also have a problem with that is if you go back almost 100 years and look at Europe, Europe was probably 90% would have said that they're Christian. That number was pretty solid here, even in the United States. Today, that number is less than 50% in Europe, and we just went under 50% in this country. So it's definitely not going higher. It's getting less. So, all right, I don't remember who I put on the Zechariah. Who did I sucker into the Zechariah passage?
That's me.
Oh, you're the first one?
Yeah.
All right, so remember, I want to remind everybody. So what we're doing today is we're trying to look at is whether the return of Christ is a single event or is it 2 events. So the verses that Amir throws out here, and which I use often, talk about the return of Christ, but they talk about it very differently. So you're actually gonna give what I consider point number 1. So this is number 1 idea. And you can go ahead and start, bro. If you'll just read through Zechariah.
Okay. This is Zechariah 14, 1-5. Behold, the day of the Lord is coming, and your spoil will be divided in your midst. For I will gather all the nations to battle against Jerusalem. The city shall be taken, the houses rifled, and the women ravished. Half of the city shall go into captivity, but the remnant of the people shall not be cut off from the city. Then the Lord will go forth and fight against those nations, as he fights in the day of battle. And in that day his feet will stand on the Mount of Olives, which faces Jerusalem on the east, and the Mount of Olives shall be split in 2 from east to west, making a very large valley. Half of the mountain shall move toward the north, and half of it toward the south. Then you shall flee through my mountain valley, for the mountain valley shall reach to Azal. Yes, you shall flee, as you fled from the earthquake in the days of Uzziah, king of Judah. Thus the Lord my God will come, and all the saints with you.
Okay, so before, and I'm going to have Jimmy read the next one. So Zechariah is talking about a time when according to Zechariah, and he's talking about that he's saying the Lord's going to come. He's going to put his foot on the Mount of Olives, and what happens to the Mount of Olives?
Splits in 2.
You ever hear of the Mount of Olive fault line?
Well, you talked about it
Okay,
the other day, so yeah,
that's
it. Yeah.
So yeah, it's interesting. It's not something new. About 20 years ago, they were going to build a hotel on top of the Mount of Olives. They're going to put it right in the middle. And I guess the geologist nerds come back and be like, you can't, man, there's a fault line. And it's not like there's no idea of earthquakes. In fact, when Jesus was put on the cross, there's an earthquake. Yeah. Tears the curtain between the Holy of Holies and 2. But yeah, there's a fault line that runs just a little bit south of the Temple Mount, and it runs directly right in the middle of the Mount of Olives. So it's kind of interesting. Not that I'm saying that Jesus could definitely do this if he wants to, but it's interesting because it says when he puts his foot on the Mount of Olives that the Mount of Olives splits into 2 pieces. So anyway, but that's an event. Now he's going to talk about some others. So we got a battle going on, right? So he's assembling for a battle. He's talking about the remnant cut off, people in some trouble here. And he talks about fleeing through the mountain valley. And a lot of people believe that mountain valley is the valley created when the Mount of Olives splits in 2. That's where they go to flee. So that's a event, but that's an event when Jesus is coming back. So I'm going to let you read Matthew 24. That's the Olivet Discourse.
All right. Matthew 24, 27, 31. For as the lightning comes from the east and flashes to the west, so also will be coming of the Son of Man. So also will the coming of the Son of Man be. For wherever the carcass is, there the eagles will be gathered together. Immediately after the tribulation of those days, the sun will be darkened, and the moon will not give its light. The stars will fall from heaven, and the powers of the heavens will be shaken. Then the sign of the Son of Man will appear in heaven, and then all the tribes of the earth will mourn, and they will see the Son of Man coming on the clouds of heaven with power and great glory. And he will send his angels with a great sound of a trumpet, and they will gather together his elect from the 4 winds, from one end of heaven to the other.
Okay, so I'm gonna put this to you guys. So I mean, you got two events. You got this event in Zechariah where he's talking about the Lord coming back, putting his foot on the Mount of Olives, earthquake. I mean, some major things going on. Then this other one you have, and we're gonna look at it from two different standpoints. One, you've got a topographical event. You got an earthquake, and this one, I mean, it's literally saying the powers of heaven will be. The stars are falling from heaven. The moon's not giving its light. The sun is darkened. So cosmological type events is what's happening here. But what do you guys see? What's the similarities between these two events? Is it peaceful? It give you a peaceful, easy feeling?
No, not at all.
It's going to be a terrifying event when it happens for the people that are there. I mean,
yeah, and so both of these events, I mean, it's saying Jesus is coming back, but in one you got a topographical earthquake and the idea of people fleeing to a valley.
mm-hmm.
And in this other one, oh man, you got the sun's darkened, the moon's not shining, you got stars falling from the heaven. It says the powers of the heaven are shaken. And he's saying that's a sign of Jesus coming. And he sends his angels out to the four corners of the world, from one end of heaven to the other, to grab his elect. And that's an issue that we have. But I'm going to bring this up right now. What's interesting about it, a couple of reasons. Number one, Augustine hits the world roughly 400 AD, and he changes a lot of things. Number one is power and influence of the church. It's also a time when Christianity is becoming the official religion of the Roman Empire at that time. So a lot of power. It ends up becoming a very political power. That's how we get the Crusades and some of the other stuff. So some dark times of the Christian, but it's because of the power they had. But he's the beginning of this idea of all millennialism, and because of it, he also gets to, when you start to get to people like Martin Luther, John Calvin, and others, they literally, because they can't see the Jews being back there. And I talked about that a little bit in my first lesson, but the Jews were, it's called the Great Diaspora, but it happened roughly 70 AD when Titus came in and destroys Jerusalem, scatters the Israelites, and then self-rule for Israel in general totally done 135 AD. Never were they a nation again. But we could see them as a nation now. And I'm always curious if Augustine, if Martin Luther, John Calvin, even John Wesley, if those guys had seen Israel, but I don't think their doctrines would have been the same. And I give them grace and mercy on that, because it does shape a lot of eschatology, tons of stuff. They can't any place that Israel's mentioned, they just have to write them off, because they're like, there is no Israel, there is no nation of Israel. But of course we can see it. I mean, it's there today. So that is something. So I give them a little bit. So now here's the other thing. What's the reaction of the people? Are those people glad to see Jesus?
They're crying about it.
Yeah, in either episode, these people are scared. They are not happy to see what's coming. Now, some of these people fleeing, they're going to be glad that God's given them an open passage, but that's the reaction. So here's the thing. I'm going to read this one. So here's what Titus talks about. He's talking about an event of Jesus returning. And he says in Titus 2:12 through 14, teaching us that denying ungodliness and worldly lust, we should live soberly, righteously, and godly in the present age, looking for the blessed hope and glorious appearing of our great God and Savior Jesus Christ, who gave himself for us that he might redeem us from every lawless deed and purify for himself his own special people, zealous for good works. So when Titus is talking about the return of Christ, and he's talking to the church, obviously, but he's saying, looking for the blessed hope. Do you guys see the blessed hope in Zechariah or in the passage in Matthew 24? Of course, those are the words of Jesus. But, I mean, you see the blessed hope in those?
No.
Yeah, no.
So, okay. So we're going to go to, we got a couple more passages. The passage of Zechariah or the Olivet Discourse, they don't fit this blessed hope that's mentioned by Titus. What about the church? Do you see any evidence of an idea of a church? Now, granted, Zechariah, that's definitely pre-church. We know the church started right after the ascension of Jesus at Pentecost. That's kind of the official go live date for the church. But do you see any shadow or evidence of the church in Zechariah or in the Olivet Discourse?
No, and I think some of that is what I get a little confused about, or what I did get confused about, is that, well, which church is it? who is that church? Is it the Church of Christ? Is it a Baptist church? Is it, you know, Pentecostal? So, but no, you don't. But I don't want to get too far ahead, but you know, I realized through reading the book that we are the church.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. Yeah. Of course, church universal for sure.
Right.
Yeah. The thing is and that's what I'm trying to get through, even in this little bit of state. One, I want to open up the idea that hey, there are a couple of events. And people think that's the second Advent. We're going to talk about that at the very end of this. The idea of the first Advent. So what's interesting is there's a major, and I talked about this, is a major fault line that runs through that, and I don't think that's a coincidence at all. I mean, if you go back to the Ottoman Empire, another great and interesting thing is that they sealed up the East Gate. Why? Because the Jews and the Ottoman Empire knew from their beliefs that the Messiah is coming through the East Gate. Well, the Messiah did come through the East Gate because he just gets through talking on the Mount of Olives. He comes in. That's his glorious appearing. When Jesus shows up, he showed up at the East Gate. They think he's still coming, though, because the Jews rejected the idea that Jesus was Messiah. The Ottoman Empire was like the same thing. So Solomon, at the time, he takes it, bricks it all up, plants a cemetery in front of the East Gate, thinking there's no way this Hebrew Messiah is not coming through all this. And he doesn't realize, number one, he don't know there's a fault line that runs through there that could change that could open some things up.
Well, doesn't that kind of speak about these opinions that, you know, Chief was talking about earlier? Like, these guys have an opinion of what they think is going to happen, and it fits their narrative. You know, so that's why they've built all these things, because it's like, we think he's coming, but it's our opinion that it's going to come like this.
Yeah. Kind of interesting is, and I won't get too far off in the weeds in it, but there's a lot of things. People, you know, of course, people have been looking, for those that are of a pre-millennial mindset or believe in a rapture belief, they believe that Jesus is coming back for a long time. There's some things when you get into the book of Revelation that you realize, man, it's good. There's some things that's got to happen. I mean, there was some technology that had to increase to be able to do some things. Like, great example, seeing those two witnesses, preaching. The whole world could see it. And when they die, the whole world could see it. And I'm like, well, when in history could you do that? Well, you can do it today. I mean, you can get on your phone. I can see anything in the world.
You know, we talked about it. What was it? The preterism that thinks all prophecy has been fulfilled, and prophecy has been being fulfilled even before the Christ's first advent, right? I mean, so I wonder how people like that rationalize in their mind if they think it's been fulfilled, and then they are around when a new one comes out. Like for instance, you mentioned Israel being born in a day, and nobody leading up to that could ever see a way that could happen. So you naturally fall into, okay, well, if that's not going to be able to happen, then maybe it's a metaphorical Israel or something like that. Yeah. But then it actually happens. Do you then say, okay, now everything's been fulfilled, or now everything? And I think that's, the further in history we go, in human history we go, the bigger advantage we have to see, okay, there's been some stuff happening between when this guy thought this and when now we're, and I think that's why it's so important for us to not close our mind off to say, okay, this is how it's going to be, because the things that you're talking about now, there are prophecies that are still out there that I have no idea how they're ever going to fulfill. But you can start seeing, like you just mentioned, how will the whole world be made aware of this at the same time? Well, okay, that social media or whatever we have right now to communicate that. Even 100 years ago, nobody could have foreseen that coming. 50 years ago, some of the things we're doing, I just it makes me wonder sometimes how somebody could close their mind off and say, okay, this has already been done, and I'm going to explain it like this, and then when it actually is fulfilled, at that point, I guess you got to go, okay, now everything's been done, and I just.
Yeah, I guess my hope is that when people come into this Bible, that they view it by faith. I can't see it now. Like that was the problem for the last 1,500 years. They just had to write Israel out of it. They're like, there's no way, it doesn't even exist. This temple can't happen. There's no nation of Israel. This can't happen. There's no Israel. Mm-hmm. And if they would have just come in and faith and say, look, there ain't an Israel right now, but God's word says that as long as there's a sun, as long as there's a moon, as long as there's stars in the heavens, that Israel will not cease to be a nation before me forever. Yeah. And we know when you get to the end of Revelation, there ain't going to be a sun. So there is a time when there won't be a nation of Israel. But if I'd have read that, I'd have taken God at face value. I don't see a nation of Israel, but he ain't done. He's not done with. There's no way he's done because he says he's not done. So that's event number one, and I think we're all agree that's going to be a rough time.
Yeah,
it's not this blessed hope time. It's not a friendly time. It's a rough time. So here's event number two, and I can't remember who starts this one.
That's me.
Okay, Jimmy.
So 1 Corinthians 15:50 through 58. Now this I say, brethren, that flesh and blood cannot inherit the kingdom of God, nor does corruption inherit incorruption. Behold, I tell you a mystery. We shall not all sleep, but we shall all be changed. In a moment, in the twinkling of an eye, at the last trumpet. For the trumpet will sound, and the dead will be raised, incorruptible, and we shall be changed. For this corruptible must put on incorruption, and this mortal must put on immortality. So when this corruptible has put on incorruption, and this mortal has put on immortality, then shall be brought to pass the saying that is written, Death is swallowed up in victory. O death, where is your sting? O Hades, where is your victory? The sting of death is sin, and the strength of sin is the law. But thanks be to God who gives us the victory through our Lord Jesus Christ. Therefore, my beloved brethren, be steadfast, immovable, always abounding in the work of the Lord, knowing that your labor is not in vain in the Lord.
Okay, so vastly different from what we saw in the Olivet Discourse that Jesus gave, Matthew 24, and what we see in Zechariah chapter 14. So those are very different, but still talking about Jesus coming back. So I'm going to let you wait if you'll read through 1 Thessalonians 4:14. So we're still calling this a second event.
So 1 Thessalonians 4:14 through 18. For if we believe that Jesus died and rose again, even so God will bring with him those who sleep in Jesus. For this we say to you by the word of the Lord, that we who are alive and remain until the coming of the Lord will by no means precede those who are asleep. For the Lord himself will descend from heaven with a shout, with the voice of an archangel, and with the trumpet of God. And the dead in Christ will rise first. Then we who are alive and remain shall be caught up together with them in the clouds to meet the Lord in the air, and thus we shall always be with the Lord. Therefore comfort one another with these words.
So that's my favorite. So verse 18 is saying comfort. Here's the other thing I want to talk about on this one. So when we went through Zechariah, where does Jesus touch down? Where does the Lord touch down?
There on the Mount
of Olives, right?
Mount of Olives.
Literally breaks it in two. Where does he say we meet him here?
in the clouds.
Yeah, I say we meet him in the air. We're going to go up. He's in the clouds. We're going to go meet the Lord in the air. And he says to comfort one another with these words. Anything sounds scary at all about what Jimmy just read in Corinthians or what you just read in 1 Thessalonians?
No, and that's what makes me excited.
Yeah, that's the exciting. Yeah, that's the exciting.
Yeah.
You know, I always tell people when Jesus comes back, you don't want to see his face. Mm-mm. You want to be behind him.
Yeah.
You want to be riding behind him, right? I mean, because that's where we're supposed to be. Yeah, these guys are scared to death when he's coming. There's some good things that come out of it. We'll see that in Revelation. Another one of my favorite verses in Zechariah chapter 12, it says, they'll look upon the one in whom they pierced, and they will mourn as somebody for an only child. So there's a time coming when Israel, as a nation, according to Paul in the book of Romans, they're going to finally look upon their Savior. They're going to finally repent. And as a nation, it's the only time that the Bible ever says it, as an entire nation, they will accept finally Jesus as their Messiah. So there's good things that are coming out of the chaos. Mm-hmm. But some of what I want them to say, what I want these guys to really see is we're talking about, these are both things that are talking about Jesus coming back. They're very different. I mean, very different reaction. One, this is the blessed hope. Hey, tell everybody. Titus is saying this is some good news for us. But then on the other hand, you got these other events that we read in Zechariah and in the Olivet Discourse. Yeah, they don't sound like something that people probably going to want us to be just hanging out for. Yeah, they're different. So the other thing is I want to speak real quick. He talks about a mystery. And the mystery is different. So a secret from God is something that nobody could see coming at all. A mystery is something that just hasn't been revealed. And back to what you're saying, I give these guys some grace.
Yeah.
You know, if you go back 200 years, even 150 years ago, man, we everybody's riding around on horses. I mean, you want to send somebody a message, man, you got to give it to a guy on a horse, and he'll get it there eventually.
Mm-hmm.
And then we finally get the phone, and then, of course, as it progressed, Telegram. We got all these things that finally today, like you say, we can see and talk to, and I do all the time. Talk to my friends in India all the time. It's amazing the tech that we have today. But, yeah, that's the thing. So, event number one, it's obviously not a mystery. I mean, when we look at that, this is something that everybody's going to see. I mean, there ain't nothing mysterious about it. They see him coming. The earth is shaking. Stars are falling from the sky. Mount of Olives breaking in two pieces. So that's very different from this event number two. Event number two, according to Paul. Now, you have to remember this about, if you're not aware of this with Thessalonica, biggest problems that they had is, number one, they thought it had already happened. Mm-hmm. They think that this thing's already happened. The other problem they had is they thought if their loved ones were believers but they died, they just stayed in the grave. So when Paul's talking about it, he's fixing a couple things. That's why he says at one point, he's like, look, I don't want you guys to be ignorant about this stuff. And he wasn't being mean to him. He's like, y'all are fretting and worrying about stuff. I'm coming to fix and include you in on here's what this mystery is. So in event number one, every eye will see Jesus return to the earth, physically touching down on the Mount of Olives. How do you guys read event number two? And of course, you kind of hit on it.
Yeah, I see it as the time when the trumpet sounds and Jesus appears in the air, and then and we go.
Yeah, it's location,
Yeah,
right?
yes.
Yeah, two totally different locations.
Oh,
One, he's coming physically down to the earth. That's an event. And that event is got chaos around it. Not chaos for Jesus, obviously, but it's chaotic. The second one just says he's in the air. And we meet him in the air.
Is there, and we've had this discussion before, you know, it seems pretty clear there will be a second coming, not a second and then a third coming. So we've had this discussion before. Is there any room that all of this is talking about a singular event, just from different perspectives of like people witnessing a car wreck from different corners of an intersection or something? And
So the guys that don't believe in rapture at all, and I do have to bring that up, and I think I'll get to it a little bit later. There's a word that's mentioned. Number one, rapture's not an event that's never happened. In fact, you go back into the Old Testament, Enoch was taken alive. Mm-hmm. Elijah and fiery before Elisha's eyes. I mean, Elisha got to watch Elijah get into a fiery horses and everything, chariot, and off he goes into the heavens. And as far as the Bible says, that's two humans that never died. Mm-hmm. In fact, there was Elisha told him, hey, he ain't coming back. But if you remember in that story, everybody's like, hey, man, maybe we should send out a search party. Finally, Elisha's tired of arguing with him. He's like, okay, go send them out. So they go out for days trying to make sure that Elijah didn't go up with some kind of whirlwind, had a wreck, and he was laying on top of some mountain. So they go looking for Elijah. Well, of course, they don't find Elijah. Mm-hmm. So the rapture event is not an idea that's never happened. Here's the thing about the verses. When it talks about us being caught up, the word caught up in the Greek is a word called harpazo. Now, a lot of people say, well, rapture not mentioned in the Bible. Well, in the Latin, the word is rapturo. And rapturo is where we get the idea of rapture. So, to your point, yeah, there are people that believe that. There are people that do not believe in a rapture. They believe that both of these events or all four passages are referring
to a singular event.
Yeah, to a single event.
I'm not seeing anything, and maybe I missed. I'm not seeing anything in there that would preclude that.
So there are also guys that are called post-trib rapture guys. So what they believe is they still want to hang on to we'll meet him in the air, but as Jesus is coming to put his foot on the Mount of Olives, we go up, meet him halfway, and then just keep going down with him.
So we come in, just fall in line, and come down.
My arguments about it aren't so much about these events as there's some verses that point to the fact that several places within Scripture that we're not appointed to wrath, and that whole 7-year period is a time of wrath. Right. So if we're not appointed to wrath, in fact, when you get to the letters in the churches, he literally tells the church that, hey, I'll keep you from the hour of trial that's going to come upon the world to test the world. So that's some of the play-ins into these events. Is there an event where we escape the wrath that's coming upon the world? I mean, or are we destined to be in it? And there's plenty of people, to your point, they're stockpiling. They got 7 years of food. They got bunkers. They believe that they're going to have to weather this thing out. My argument is that if the bridegroom is not going to let the bride run through that, no more than God allowed Noah. I mean, Noah ran through it. You know, he didn't have to sit out there with them dudes. God gave him a way out. And I believe He's going to do the same thing for us. So, here's my thing. The eschatological view of the scriptures, they matter back to of being exegetical versus eisegetical. I don't want to come at it because somebody told me, hey, this is the way it's going to, or I saw a TikTok or a YouTube. And I want to look at it from historically. How has God always dealt with His people? And even from Genesis forward, I mean, He told them they were going to die. Well, they didn't die right away. In fact, the first death is the animal that He killed to give them something to wear. And God's constantly taking them all the way, even to Jesus. He gave us a perfect Passover, perfect Passover lamb, just like He did when He did the Passover to His people in Egypt. He's made a way, and my assumption of everything that I've read. And I really believe that the first century church believed that. It was churches that came later, circa 4th century, 5th century. That's when they changed this view that no, these are two events. And here's my question to you guys. In Jesus' first advent, well, was that when He was born? Was it when He started teaching? Was it when He was crucified? When He was resurrected? Was it when He went down into the pits and spoke to the prisoners in Sheol? Was it when He ascended to heaven? What marked the first advent?
His birth, I would think.
Okay.
You know, until you ask the question, I'd never really thought of it, but it does. It is an interesting thing to think about, and a lot of it goes along with the idea of Christ being fully God and fully man at the same time. And there's several passages in there that talk about how He had to learn. He had to learn the laws and things like that. But if He was fully God, He would have already known all that. He wouldn't have to learn it. And of course, the famous line on the cross, you know, why have you forsaken me? Or, why have you abandoned me? However you want to word it. That doesn't sound like something somebody fully God would say. So I think that it's an interesting question of when the Advent actually occurred. And I've always kind of held like Wade did, that it was at His birth. That's the first coming of Christ. But I could see where an argument can be made that that wasn't actually the first coming of Christ until He made Himself aware, you know, made everybody aware of who He was and stuff. So I'd never really thought of it till you asked that question.
Yeah, I mean, my argument is all of it. I mean, the first advent of Jesus was at His birth all the way up to His ascension.
Yeah.
It's the whole time. I mean, He's here. And He had things to do, but I don't think it was just it's not that's what I'm saying when people talk about first. My problem with the second advent is why can't He come because these events are very different, obviously. I don't think that they're from two different perspectives. They're two different events. Mm-hmm. And when you look at them, one's greeted with, these people, we're ready. I mean, they call it the blessed hope. And then on this other one, it's dark. It's a rough time. And my thing is that the second event, much like the first advent, doesn't have to be a single event. It doesn't just have to be when Jesus puts His foot down the Mount of Olives, no more than the first advent had to be His birth, or had to be His death, or had to be His resurrection. It was all of it.
But that brings us right back, and we've had this discussion before too, about time. Time when it comes to God. And time is an invention of us because of the way we have a linear lifetime. We have a beginning and we have an end in this human body, a beginning and an end. And we've divided things up into time. We've done everything that way. AD, the whole concept of AD and BC, we've divided everything up into time. God didn't have a beginning and He won't have an end. There is no time like as we understand it. So anytime you start talking about whether it was a single event or another different event, just like you just described the whole thing, Jesus' whole life being the Advent, that's a just saying it's a singular event doesn't even define it well enough, because there is no event unless you have a timeline. It's all, and I don't even know, I can't even wrap my human mind around the fact of being a being like God, where time doesn't exist, because so much of what we do is we live by it. Everything is this point to that point in our life, in every aspect of our life, and God doesn't have that in His life. That in His, not even a life. I mean, we classify life as born and then you die. That's your life. God doesn't even have that. God is alive, but He doesn't have a life the way we have defined it, or we've been constrained to in this human body. So that's why it's so. Anytime you start looking at things from a time perspective, it starts becoming harder and harder to wrap your mind around what that actually means in God's world. God.
Well, that's all we know.
It is, but you take a creature that was never began and never have an ending, which means in our human, the best way I can describe it and make sense in my own mind is that God lives in all times at the same time. So there is this all of this from the beginning to where Jesus comes back is a singular event that is occurring in front of us. This is an explosion that has lasted in our time thousands and thousands of years, and it's just a single little sliver of what is out there.
Yeah, he literally says, Scripture says that to him 1,000 years is but a day.
Yeah.
And of course, for us, we start the Bible. The first line in Genesis says, "In the beginning."
Yeah.
As far as I know, that's when the clock started. In the beginning. Now, he's very specific about time now, because just like at this event that we're talking about, when we get into Revelation, I know exactly how long that time is. It's 2,520 days. It's why? Because that's what it says in Daniel. Yeah. It's set, so I know exactly how long it is. Now, I guess, of course, that's probably a topic for another day, but will time exist when this is all said and we get past 1,000 years? What does that look like? My suspicion is we don't have a clock no more.
Yeah.
That's like when I go to Cozumel. I feel like when I get to Cozumel, those dudes don't know nothing about time. It doesn't exist. So maybe we're getting back to a time when there is no time.
Well, the whole idea of salvation, it's very easy for us, and I've heard people say that we will have an eternity in heaven. Our eternity started the second we accepted Christ. That is when because we will not have death. Our eternity began then. God has been eternal the whole time.
Sure.
Our eternity started at the moment we accepted Christ. Yeah. And it is kind of I think about the people that have passed before I have. My dad died in 2017. Well, 1,000 years is like a day. My dad has just gotten to heaven, and he will turn around after getting to heaven and realizing I'm in heaven. He'll turn around, there I'll be, and everybody come by because of the way time works in heaven, which actually is the absence of time. So it's to me, it hurts us when we lose somebody and we miss them, and we have a long wait before we see them again. But those that have been saved, they're going to turn around, and there we are. It's all, and that's why I think people talk about this big reunion in heaven. It is going to be kind of like that. Everybody, in effect, in the way time works in heaven, is going to show up pretty much right at the same time. We're all going to be there,
it's going to be hard for those guys not to be busy, because when you get to Revelation chapter 4, you get into Ezekiel, Isaiah sees it. There's a lot of things to see in heaven. Here's the bad news, at least from my eschatological point of view. We ain't staying there long. We don't get to stay there very long. So you better enjoy it while you're there, because especially us if we're raptured, we get to see it probably the least. Your dad's gonna get to enjoy a little extra. Okay, we're literally gonna get there probably either 7 years or whatever. We're coming back here, and why? God made this for us. This is the place that God made. This is where we're going to be. People always tell me, "Hey man, we're going to be up in heaven forever." I'm like, "No, you ain't. You're not going to be there that long. Come back here." So, hey, I'm going to wrap this up. And I love these little side conversations. That's probably more important than running through this stuff. It's just to kind of get a glimpse. But what I'm hoping is is that guys will at least have an open mind, that they'll look at these events, and my hope is that they see God's not done. He's coming back. I 100% believe that there'll be a physical reign of Christ in Jerusalem, and he'll reign over the whole world. It's going to be a cool time. I mean, the Bible has a lot of cool things about even that time back here on earth. Kids playing with vipers, lions with lambs, and there's a lot of things that get back to that Eden time that got screwed up, with the first Adam. But the second Adam's correcting it, and we're going to get back to a time where it's going to be interesting. Mm-hmm. It's interesting. The real thing is we're going to have a lot of jobs in that. So, in my opinion, I mean, kind of the takeaway that I wanted to be is if you'll take the Bible at face value. I love the stuff of Augustine, Martin Luther, all those guys, but I don't want to allow, even what my pastor says, and I'm saying the same thing even about me when I teach, don't take what I say as the de facto way it's got to be, but look at it with fresh eyes, come at it from a different angle, because if the book scares you, it shouldn't. There's a lot of hope in that book, a lot of good things coming out of that book. And if they'll see it, I think number one, it'll make sense to them. So let's see what the last. Hopefully, agree. Yeah. So hopefully, again, Amir's pretty awesome in this. He's hoping in his study that everyone agrees that we're looking at two events. These things that you saw in Zechariah, Matthew chapter 24, different from what we see in 1 Corinthians 15:51, 1 Thessalonians chapter 4. That these are two different events, that we are going to meet him in the air, and then we're going to come back with him, and then we'll hit it on the Mount of Olives. Mm-hmm. So that's where we're at. Hey, you guys got anything you want to add at the end?
No, appreciate you doing this.
You're running through it too?
No.
What's that?
Revelation, revealing Revelation?
You
got two B things.
I'll be there. Yeah,
Well,
I missed the first one, but I'll be there.
And I'll tell you, I couldn't put it down. When I got to reading the book, I couldn't stop. And you mentioned the guys like Noah, that he delivered him from what was going to happen. And it lines up with what will happen to us. He'll deliver us. Mm-hmm. And that's the cool thing about it. And that's what's exciting about it. And I'm just excited, and I hope that people that are following along or that are coming to your study, they're digging in, and that this is God breathed. And just take it at what it is.
Yeah, that's my hope. And I love this. I love Amir. Like I say, he's one of my favorite. He didn't run by himself. Barry Stagner's another guy. Jack Hibbs. If anybody likes Jack Hibbs, out of California, he's part of the Calvary Chapel churches. They're buddies. They do a lot of stuff together. But I love them all because they spend a lot of time, and they call themselves watchmen. They're watching things in the world, but it's interesting. Their perspectives are interesting to me because they're upbeat. There's no bad. They're like, hey man, there's some good stuff coming.
Yeah,
just hang in there. So God's going to fix a lot of things. So, man, I appreciate you guys coming for podcast number 1.
Yeah, thank you.
I mean, you guys did a pretty good job, so it may make it hard for me.
No, I appreciate it, man.
All right, so we're going to leave it at that. You guys stay tuned. We're going to be doing chapter 1 next week of Revealing Revelation, so follow along with us, and we appreciate your time.
Thank you.